We're brought up in science to think that if we do science right, then our knowledge is really good knowledge. It's described by some scholars as the gold standard, and it's a really good thing to aspire to. But what it does automatically, it rather demeans everybody else's knowledge. Because it could be that what one group labels true knowledge seems total nonsense to somebody else. That doesn't help you to interact. But I think the way we tend to focus, particularly in science communication studies, on messages is perhaps to miss the bigger picture. We need to ask, who is this person? What agenda or product are they ultimately trying to push? And how many steps backwards do you have to go to find what that is?
A lot of the time in these sorts of discussions we end up blaming people for not knowing stuff and saying if only people knew the stuff that we knew, then the world would be a better place. And I think, basically I'm a policy wonk at heart, I think we should hold powerful people to account. But it means that when we look at an issue like, for example, climate change or an anti-vaccination movement, and we see a group of people who purport to disagree with what the scientific consensus says on those issues, rather than hoping that our sword of truth is going to win that argument, we should instead be asking, what do these people really want? What are they objecting to? I would say that there is another thing that science has to look at. When it looks at itself in the mirror, it has to ask itself, which is about the way that science is not just to do with truth in modern society. Science is also to do with progress. And here, the debate about Brexit, Trump, the rise of populism, the growth of inequalities, it is easy for the scientific community to tell itself that, well, if only we stuck to the facts, everything would be okay. It's much harder for scientists to ask themselves, whose interests are we serving?
If we think about these images or these messages that are created, sometimes I think they need to be created together, and that we're coming up with these ideas and these perspectives together, that the knowledge is almost, if I could go back to the idea of being in a theatre, people might think that everyone's sitting there being very passive, but actually watching a play on a stage, you're bringing your own perspectives all of the time as you're watching that. And the real interesting moment is when the audience and the actors kind of almost meet in the middle. It's this kind of emotional moment where there's a connection, and that is a kind of authentic moment, and it'll be different for different people who are sat in that audience. So for me, I think this idea of truth or emotional truth, if I'm going to frame it that way, plays out in different ways for different people.
Journalism should be about holding power to account. It should be about empowering people to be able to think about and decide the things that will shape their lives. And that suggests a model of science, and now we might say tech journalism, that is much more critical, that is much more expansive, that doesn't do that sort of press release, whiz-bang, breakthrough type of reporting that sometimes seems to be designed to sort of astonish rather than empower its public audiences. And I think what we're sort of working towards here is a model of knowledge that recognises that the truth can't just be plucked out of the air. We have to work at it. And the how do you know it question is, I think, part of that. It's about understanding, and I think this is a constructive role that science journalism can play, is helping people to understand how people know stuff. So helping people to understand that not everything expressed in the name of science is equal, that collective truths take work. This is, I think, actually what our post-truth moment is about. It's not about whether we've suddenly become sceptical of there being an objective truth. It's about whether we have lost a sense of shared information so that we are destabilising our societies in new ways. And I think that's the concern.